Thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Faustine Chan. I'm the Business Innovation Manager for BBB serving the Pacific Southwest. And we've been holding our summer webinar series, Ignite Your Mind, to just help our business owners and businesses navigate through these trying times and just give them resources. We have a great speaker today. We have Eileen Cox. She is a certified business career coach and founder of True to Choice. She helps entrepreneurs and aspiring entrepreneurs to do more with what they love on a day-to-day basis by gaining the clarity on how to create more authenticity and meaning to their work while enhancing other areas in their life. Her focus is to bring the professional and personal and financial lives into alignment. Before becoming a coach, Eileen spent over 2 decades as a financial professional, working in numerous industries with large corporations and also small startups. So please welcome today's speaker, Eileen Cox.
Thank you, Faustine, and thank you everyone for having me here today. I'm really looking forward to presenting this with you, the resourcefulness and why it matters, especially during this time. It's an important topic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to actually stop my own video so that I'm not looking at myself in the screen. And please feel free. There's going to be times when I'm going to be asking you to contribute in the chat just to kind of keep you engaged in what's going on, keep your mind on the subject and thinking about how it applies to you, and or maybe just to make sure you're not falling asleep. So thank you, and let me see how I can get this all get going. Here we go. And where is... Okay, hang on one second. This worked on mine before. Now I'm not finding my shared screen. So let's see, my desktop.
It should be on the bottom of Zoom.
Yeah, no, it's my choice is not showing my slideshow, which is interesting because it worked before. So let me try and go back down and go back up again. Where's my Zoom? Technical difficulties. This is what happens when you do a practice run and then it doesn't work in real time. Okay, so let me try again with the share screen. There we go. Now we're all set. So is everybody able to see my screen where you should be seeing resourcefulness, why it matters?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, so today's subject is really an important one because it's something that we're having to do on a day-to-day basis in our work and our lives. And you're going to be surprised as we go through this presentation on how often resourcefulness is going to play a role in your business. It hasn't been spoken about as much, at least I haven't heard this term used as often as some of the other buzzwords that I've been recently hearing since COVID hit the world. The ones that I've been hearing the most about and have attended actually presentations on have been resilience, perseverance, and pivots. I don't know if this is something that some of you have heard, but this is something that I have seen a lot of. And it deserves a lot of attention, resourcefulness, because I feel it's a factor in all of the other words that I just mentioned. So before I really begin, I wanted to start with a story. And I'm trying to see if while I'm sharing, if there's a way for me to see the chat.
It should pop up if someone types in something in the chat.
Okay,
but can
great.
you make your slideshow and presentation mode?
Let's see.
It should be under slideshow. Go to the right more. See how there's animations.
Ah, there we go.
And then play from the start.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Technology and me haven't been best of friends lately. Okay, so. And My story that I wanted to begin with is, how many of you know the story of Aaron Ralston? Aaron Ralston was somebody who loved climbing, and he loved to climb solo. So he set off to climb in the Blue John Canyon alone in Utah. And as he was climbing down a canyon, a boulder came loose and trapped his hand. This story might be becoming familiar to some of you now. He hadn't told anyone where he was going or when to expect him to come back, so he didn't expect that a rescue was going to be happening anytime soon. With little food and water, he knew he was going to have to rely on his own resourcefulness. This is why I chose the story. And he's going to have to rescue himself. He struggled for 3 days to remove that boulder, to release his hand, but was not successful. And then he came to the realization that he was going to have to cut off his hand in order to save himself. For 2 days, he tried to get that job done. And on the 6th day of his ordeal, he came to the conclusion that he was actually going to have to break 2 major bones in his arm in order to free himself. After another hour or so of struggling with a multi-tool, he eventually managed to amputate his hand. But he was still faced with a 65-foot drop to get to his vehicle. He managed to get down the canyon, but he was bleeding so heavily that if he had not run into a family on a camping trip that helped to rescue him, he might not have survived the blood loss. His story is the story in the movie 127 Hours. Now, some may describe his ordeal as the definition of resilience and perseverance, a sheer will to live. But his survival is attributed to his resourcefulness. Do you all agree with that? And, well, I'm not seeing any answers in the chat, but, oh, maybe I do. I see something over here. Yes, great. Okay, thank you. I finally figured out where the chat was. So now, I wanted to take a moment to explore when you have an experience of resourcefulness firsthand. So I'm going to ask a few questions about what you have seen in your own life. So I'm going to ask you if you can recall a time when you had to be resourceful. Think of that in your mind for a moment. And think about the result that you got from that. And why did you get that result? This is important to ask yourself this. As we're going through this, I'd love for you to keep this in mind. Now, if you can put in the chat at least that, yes, you have a story in mind, and you can remember what the result was, and you may even have an understanding of why you got the result that you did, that'd be great. So just type a yes or no into the chat and let me know that you feel, based on what you've already heard about resourcefulness, you have had some experience with it. Okay, great. Thank you everyone for taking part in this. It's much easier if I know that you're listening and I'm not boring you to tears. So let's talk about what we're going to do today. What we're going to cover in today's presentation is more in-depth knowledge what resourcefulness really is, why it matters so much, what gets in the way, and then some steps and characteristics to be a resourceful leader. So I have another question for you. I like some questions here. Before we really dive into understanding what resourcefulness is, can anybody type into the chat what they think these 4 items represent? Technology, money, people, or contacts, and time. Okay. So Caroline, you wrote something about yes, but you're in the process of something, so you're not sure of your results yet. So that's great. If you're in the middle of being resourceful on a project, but you haven't gotten to the end of it, it's great to know, and you'll recognize where you are as we go through this presentation. And tools, things we use daily, Faustine says about these items that I have here on this slide. And Faustine, thanks for having a story. We'll try and share some of these stories later on as we get through the presentation. Okay, so basically, what are these items? These items are resources. How many of you feel that these resources are important assets to have both in your life and in your business in order to achieve some of your goals? Great, Caroline, very important. And that's true. Resources are essential for our livelihood, in maintaining a business, as well as survival. It was fortunate for Aaron Ralston that he had that multi-tool with him in his kit and was able to reach it while being trapped in order to amputate his hand and free himself from that boulder. That multi-tool for him was a resource. The idea to use it was resourcefulness. So I gave away a little secret in that one, and that is our resources do not equal resourcefulness. Being resourceful often results in finding the resources that we need to achieve the goal that we're trying to achieve. But you can have resources without resourcefulness and not necessarily achieve what you're trying to achieve. So that's the differentiation that I wanted to make kind of clear. So what is resourcefulness? Simplified, resourcefulness is skill and mindset. And it's kind of an integration of the two, and it also falls right in the middle, some of the things, and you'll understand what I mean by that as we go further along. Now, I picked several different definitions to put here. Hopefully I don't overwhelm you as to what resourcefulness is, and I chose to do that because each one of them has some key words in them, and instead of trying to pull them apart, I wanted to make sure that you all processed it. Everybody hears things differently because we all have different learning styles. So I wanted to make sure that the point got across. The most succinct, obviously, is that resourcefulness is the ability to find quick and clever ways to overcome difficulties. But it's also about getting things done in the face of obstacles and constraints. And that means approaching what's in front of you, optimizing what you have. And that's a key phrase, optimizing what you have, because sometimes you already have the resources that you need. And whether you're making something new or just thinking about doing something different or better. Resourceful leaders are imaginative and persistent. Those are also some keywords to keep in mind as we go through this presentation. So to be resourceful, it means to be able to create useful and unique solutions in challenging situations. And useful means that your solution works and it's practical. And there's going to be some skills that we talk about later that'll kind of touch upon that particular part of the definition. Unique means the solution is interesting, unexpected, and clever. And when you're finding creative solutions in a tough situation, that is you exercising that resourcefulness. So being resourceful also takes more than cognitive skill. It takes the ability to process information emotionally as well as intellectually. And that's where you're going to come between those two arrows of the skill and the mindset. I'd do one of these questions at a time, but it wasn't working before, so sorry I have a whole page here. But let's start with question 1. How many here feel it's necessary characteristic for success to be resourceful? You can type a yes or no in the chat for that, or you can number them 1, 2, and 3. We'll go on to number 2 is, has anyone ever missed the mark or failed at something? And has anyone ever given up on a goal, a plan, or initiative? And why do you think that may have happened? Was it a lack of resources, or was it a lack of resourcefulness? Okay. Thank you for typing in your answers. Now, as for the why, it's always interesting to look at whether you think it was a lack of resources, that you didn't have the money, you didn't have the time, you didn't have the people, the technology, or whatever it was to help you achieve that goal. Or was it a lack of resourcefulness where you weren't able to get the resources in order to achieve that goal? The most common excuse to quit or a reason for a failure are a lack of resources. Any of you who have had your own business or have been in a position where you're selling something, have you ever heard from a prospect, I don't have the money right now. I don't have the time right now to invest in that or whatever you're selling? Or have you ever used one of them where you didn't have the time or money, or your business couldn't take on a project because you didn't have the manpower to support the larger contract that might have been coming your way? So these are all things to look at, but there's always that solution to say, is that really the best reason to stop you from moving forward, growing to that next level, investing in yourself or in your business? So I decided to put in a quote from Tony Robbins. And so if you've ever heard this phrase before, it's not about your resources, it's about your resourcefulness. There's a couple of different variations of this particular quote. I chose this one being more positive because it's not talking about failure necessarily. It's talking about just what I've been talking about, how your resources are not your main reason for success or failure, but it is your resourcefulness. And sorry to be slow from slide. There we go. Looking for the arrow. So another question, and this slide is going to look a little bit familiar, is what do you need for success? Often we're drawing upon our exercising of resourcefulness in order to achieve something, to be successful at something, or to possibly even pivot in a situation. And we're going to get to that in a few moments. And another famous quote, of which Tony Robbins is in again. And just to let you know, if you ever try to Google resourcefulness, he's going to come up all over the place. So Tony Robbins believes success is 80% psychology, 20% skill. If you ever talk to any athletes or really some top earners out there in the world, some big names, often they say the same thing. It's your psychology, your mindset that is more important than your skill. And I've known somebody, if anyone, I'll tell a quick story. I went to college with somebody once who was a straight A student. I graduated with an accounting degree. He was also in the program a year ahead of me. And very nice person, but he was very insecure, very almost too quiet, too shy. He could not get a job. And the reason he couldn't get a job, even though he had interviews with all the top accounting firms, is because he couldn't present himself. His psychology was an insecurity which led when he walked in the door. And that stopped him from being able to get some of the best jobs that were out there. And he had the expertise, he had the skill. So that's something to be aware of. Jim Rohn, who was actually a mentor of Tony Robbins, he describes success also as being only 20% skill, but he says the other 80% is strategy. So you might know how to read, but more importantly, what's your plan to read? So he was about making sure you made the space for whatever it was you're trying to do. So what are some of the characteristics of success? I have gone through and researched 3 different resources for this. I did not put them on the slide, my apologies. But I only took bits and pieces of each one as they might cross over in our conversation here with resourcefulness. Resilience is being at the top, and I feel like resourcefulness is a part of resilience. There's also the emotional awareness, creativity, a drive or a determination, optimism, you're going to hear that word again, self-confidence, belief, clarity, passion. This is not all of the characteristics of success, but these are some of the ones that really also play into the ability to be resourceful. Now, if anybody has any questions, comments, please feel free to type it in the chat and let me know. Let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. So now I'm going to get into the buzzwords that we've been hearing. At least I've heard them a lot, and I'm assuming that many of you may have heard them as well. Resilience. I've attended several talks regarding resilience. And resilience is typically defined as the capacity to recover from a difficult life event. It's your ability to withstand adversity and bounce back and grow despite life's downturns. Perseverance is defined as the continued effort to do or achieve something despite difficulties, failure, or opposition. And then the term pivot, which I've heard quite a bit about and I'd love to have some conversations about. It's become a buzzword referring to a significant business change, ranging from mild to dramatic. Pivots usually intended to help a business recover from a tough period or survive after experiencing new competition or other factors that make the original business model unsustainable. Has anybody here experienced a pivot? Thank you, Michael, for telling us that you think drive is the most important characteristic for success. I would have to agree. Drive is something that is one of the most important. And it may be independent as to who thinks what is the most important, but that's, thank you for that. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name right, Leanna. You said COVID forced you to pivot. What type of pivot have you experienced in COVID-19? If you can type it in a couple of words, was it changing the way you deliver something? Was it changing a product overall? The way you deliver services. Yeah, and I've heard a lot of that. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples, and some of them cross over between one another. So for example, when I think of a company or a business that was an example of resilience, a restaurant had come to mind because some of them had to close completely or they had to find another way to make an income. So some of them were doing more takeout. Some adopted takeout service that they didn't previously do just to keep the lights on. And now many of them are figuring out how to reopen in a safe way in accordance with state mandates. So that required resilience, but it also required a bit of a pivot. It wasn't a major pivot, but it is a slight pivot to do things like that. An example of perseverance is one of the most famous ones that I'm sure many of you have heard more than once, and that would be Thomas Edison. It is said he discovered 1,000 ways not to produce the light bulb before he finally did. So he stayed on the same path, trying to achieve the same goal, just trying different methods in order to do it. But his end goal never changed at all. He didn't really make a left or a right. He just was changing the recipe in order to figure that out. And the pivots, as we just were discussing, is also where people are trying to figure out new ways to bring business in or make money. I've heard of some brick and mortars who found ways to bring their business online and still sell their products. And then I've heard of other companies that started to make products like masks or the guards, the plastic guards and things like that. That wasn't their normal product, but it was something where they felt they were adding to the situation, almost in an altruistic way, and being able to use their employees and keep them busy. So it was almost a win-win situation for them to do something like that. It's doubtful that that will remain their business in the long term, but it was something that they could do to pivot during this time and to actually help out in the situation. So did I confuse anybody, or can you see how resourcefulness is really a cornerstone to being resilient, to persevering, and to being able to pivot? If we can type a yes or no, and this way I can make sure that the message is coming across clearly, because they do overlap so much. It's great to know that I've got you all on board. Awesome. Thank you so much for participating again and for answering. It looks like everybody is a yes. So we've already, not to beat a dead horse here, we've gone over the 3 buzzwords recently of how resilience requires that resourcefulness in order to withstand the adversity and bounce back, because it can be a skill or a mindset shift in order to get you through that. You may have to find a solution, or you may, which is a problem-solving skill, or you may have to adjust your mindset in what this whole situation means to you. Perseverance is requiring the creative solutions and a positive mindset to keep forging forward. And that's definitely a part of that definition of resourcefulness. And pivots are being very creative, imaginative, and often involve some clever solutions and out-of-the-box thinking. And those are all some of the words that were in the definition of resourcefulness. This next slide, again, is a Tony Robbins slide, and it does seem a little bit blurry. I'm sorry for that. And he has described the ultimate resources to resourcefulness as being emotions. I'm not 100% sure that all of these words classified as pure emotions, but I believe they are emotion invoking, because if you add emotion to all of those, that is how you can really make the movement in those things. So some of these key words that he has here, the reason why I wanted to put this into this presentation are, you're seeing these words in multiple places. Creativity is a part of the definition of resourcefulness all by itself. Commitment is actually, it wasn't in my slide, but it is something that would be a part of success. And it's also a part of that resourcefulness, because you need to be committed to the decisions that you're making in order to implement them. Determination, that's just like your drive. The certainty, that's another. Being confident in the choices that you're making in order to be taking the actions and applying the resourceful solutions that you're coming up with are important. Flexibility, connection, compassion, vision. Those are great. If you have the vision that you can kind of see where you're going, you can see that solution and what the outcome might be with that solution, that is an awesome way to really apply your resourceful muscle in a way that is going to get you where you want to go. So let's dig into mindset a little bit. This is a quote by Mahatma Gandhi, and I threw this in here after I threw in the next slide, and you'll see in a moment what that's about, because this really made some great connections where your beliefs become your thoughts become your words become your actions become your habits become your values, and your values become your destiny. I used to teach the simplified version of mindset being the T method. And the T method is your thoughts plus your emotions equals drives your actions. And if you were to go down and define your thoughts, a lot of times they are going to lead to your beliefs. So I feel like the arrow goes both ways. Your beliefs become your thoughts, but your thoughts also become your beliefs, because a belief is a thought that you repeat over and over again enough times that it becomes your truth. And then once that is your truth, your emotions then become solidified into your body, because an emotion is a physical feeling in your body. But once you really lock it in, it becomes a feeling that you carry around. It becomes a meaning that you're assigning to a particular thing, which is going to drive your actions. You're going to decide whether a certain thing is going to be good, bad, something to avoid or not, based on those meanings. So all encompassing, if you look at mindset a little bit more, here's your beliefs and your thoughts. There's your emotions. There's also things as your perceptions and your attitude. And that's the lens that you're looking through the life with and how you're approaching life. And those are also a part of how you respond to situations and the actions you may or may not take. Your habits and your behaviors, they become ingrained in you based on your thoughts, your perceptions, and the actions that you continue to take. So sometimes we have what I call an automatic response system, where after a while, you respond the same way over and over again to a specific event. And that becomes your habit. It becomes your behavior. And eventually it can become part of your personality. Your energy level. This is another whole topic that I could go on for a long time, but I don't have the time here today. But it really tells you about where you are. It's a little bit more than just your emotional state, but it's at what level you're feeling. It's not your physical energy, your vitality, but it's really your state of being. Where are you operating at? Under stress, you could be at one place, which might be a lower level. You can easily be angered or be in despair. But then on a day-to-day basis, where are you showing up? And how is that supporting you? Your value system. You usually start to learn your values at a young age, but you can change them as you go through life. If you're making your decisions based on your most important values, then you're kind of in alignment. But sometimes people don't. They accept or compromise on their values for something else. And that causes a discord, which makes it sometimes difficult to make the right decisions in certain situations. So your resourcefulness can be affected by how well you are staying in alignment with your truest values. Now, to go into mindset, there's actually 3 different types of mindset. And there's a book that if anybody's really interested in understanding the first 2, fixed and growth mindsets, it's a book by Carol Dweck called Mindset. And it describes a little bit more about what a fixed and a growth mindset is, and also has a quiz that I think you can get to online. So you can test yourself as to where your mindset is, and gives you an idea of where you fall and if you need to work on anything. A fixed mindset is often somebody who is a bit more logical and likes to follow a path and believes what they've learned is what they've learned, and those are their resources. They're not always open to various suggestions and options. The out-of-the-box thinking might not make them comfortable. They're looking to do the best they can with the tools that they know and have practiced to avoid failure, but they're not bringing in those new tools. So they're reproducing what they already know over and over again and just trying to perfect it. Now that might work if you're trying to perfect your golf swing, but it might not work necessarily if you're trying to run a business in changing environments. So they believe their strengths and innate gifts can be developed and focus on to perfect their abilities. But again, they're staying within a box. The growth mindset, those people, they are very open-minded. They're looking for alternative solutions, things that they don't know. They're the type of people who will go out there and ask questions and want to learn from other people who may have forged a similar path before them. So they're everyday learners who are seeking that growth and development. their focus is on improving how they do what they do. So they're not going to keep repeating what they do over and over again. And they believe that their strengths can be developed with a lot of effort, and they can reach higher levels of achievement and ability by adding and growing and developing in new ways. Now, the benefit mindset, to be honest, this is a fairly new one to me. And this is where everyday leaders are seeking to be well and to do good. And what comes to mind for me is somebody who might be more of a philanthropist, somebody who might be helping to fight environmental changes, things like that, where they're purposely focused on why they're doing what they do. They're looking for that greater good to deliver a greater gift to the world. Now, as far as resourcefulness goes, my opinion is that the growth mindset is going to help us the most. Although that benefit mindset can often work just as well, because somebody in that mindset might be helping us to find what we need to get through this pandemic and come up with a vaccine or other resources, whatever those might be. So what's going to get in the way of you achieving and being resourceful at any point in time? We're going to go back, mostly it's your mindset. Where are you, and what state or what level of being are you being at? So one way, it's kind of an attitude as much as it is a mindset, is someone who's focusing on a problem and not the solution. If all you talk about is the problem and you focus on that problem, you're not open to hearing a solution or seeing it, even if it's right in front of you. You wind up having blinders on. So someone who acknowledges a problem is very aware that it exists, but is focused on finding a solution. Their resourcefulness would be that they're going to go out there and they're going to find the tools, the people, the knowledge, whatever they need to solve the problem, because that's where their focus is. Another is a victim mindset. Now, this is a lower level energy, and this is the person who might be sitting there like, oh, I can't stand this. Why did this happen to me? This is not fair. It's so inappropriate. You know, why do I have to do this? There's no way out. I can't do this. That's an I can't mindset. They're looking for somebody to fix the problem for them. They're not willing to be resourceful and solve it themselves. Another is a resignation. It's great for people to accept where you are. Thank you, Rachel. Can't never did anything. I'm not sure what that means. There may be a typo, so I'm not sure if I'm understanding your chat contribution there, Rachel. Resignation. That is somebody who is accepting the circumstances of, or the events of what's going on as is, as if that's it. There's nothing you can do about it. Yes. Okay. Now I understand. Thank you. A can't mindset. Yes. That's the victim mindset, where somebody doesn't believe they can get themselves out of the hole that they're in. And the resignation is that person who is very accepting of circumstances, is not getting emotionally upset on the outside. They may have some of their energy drain out of them, but they're not going to look for a solution, and they're not going to talk about the problem. They're just like, it is what it is. That's just the way it is. And there are times when things are the way they are, but that doesn't mean you can't be resourceful and find creative ways to do something else. So recent circumstances, things are the way they are. Businesses had to shut down unless they were essential. Different things did happen. But the resourcefulness kicks in when you find a new way to keep your business and sustain it. So some of the blind spots that show up is also that your belief systems may or may not support you and allow you to see possibilities. That is a part of your mindset, but it's something to be aware of. And then the idea that the lack of resources, that you don't have them. When you resign to believing you don't have the resources, the time, the money, the people, then you might give up. And that's never an easy place to be. Now, sometimes those things are available to you and the answers are in front of you. But if your mindset is caught in the problem more than the looking for a solution, you will not see it. And that's something that you can always question yourself whenever you're stuck in a situation where you can't find your solution. You can stop and pause and become aware of what you're feeling in your body, what thoughts are coming to your mind, and really evaluate whether you're just missing on the blind spots. So what's next? Resourcefulness is really a behavior pattern that can be taught or learned. It's like a muscle, and it must be exercised regularly to be maintained. And the same can be said for a mindset. It's not a one-time exercise. You should really be working on it on a regular basis. Now, humans are like an onion, and we have new layers that get peeled with each life experience that we're experiencing. So you may think everything is going along great and you're doing wonderful, and then somehow something gets triggered and a new layer is revealed to you. That's great. That's where the growth comes from. You just need to notice that layer coming up and then pay attention to what you might need to do to move forward. So shifting a mindset to a place that's going to work for you is something that can be taught. You can learn it in many different ways, or you can work with somebody who can help you do that. Now I'm going to give you a couple of concrete steps here for fostering resourcefulness. This is a way to teach it to staff, teach it to yourself, teach it to children in schools. This is really some great tips that is really helpful for yourself as well as for others. Step one, and this is one of the most important steps of all, is don't be the one to provide all the answers for the other people, even if you have the answer. One of the things I liked about coaching is helping clients find their own answer, and this is what this is about. If you're always handing out your answers to the staff that you might be working with, or to a contractor, or to even a child, they're not learning how to be resourceful. If they come up with their own answers, sometimes they might surprise you and give you something you hadn't thought about, but also they're building their muscle and they're building their own self-esteem and self-confidence because they figured it out on their own. So it's a great way to grow a team is to allow them to have that voice and come up with the answers. You're always there. You can help and oversee if you're in a management position, but that's a great way for you to foster resourcefulness throughout the organization. Step two is providing space for some independence, the ability for them to work on their own. When they have some time to go off on their own and do their research and come up with the answers and even evaluate what they're coming up with, that is, again, a great tool because they're taking responsibility for their own actions. Now, step three is going to seem counterintuitive, and that's to encourage collaboration, teamwork to gain insights, strategies, resources through others. One of the best things is to have both working hand in hand. Somebody who can go off and do their own piece of a project and then come together with the rest of the team, bring their own insights, and have everybody working together to evaluate the best solution to implement. And talking about figuring out what solutions to implement, step four is teaching positive skepticism. This is a way for somebody to really hone their own judgment in making decisions. So you're looking at the multiple solutions that are available. You should be questioning all the variables that come in and how each solution might add to the outcome. And then you prioritize which one to take action on. And step five is to make sure to avail yourself and your team of any tools, techniques, and technology to assist in finding solution. Whether it's teaching them how to write lists of pros and cons, whether it's using any type of electronic tools to help, mind mapping tools, or anything else that's going to assist in coming up with the solution to that problem and deciding which of the solutions is the best option to go with. Now let's look at some of the most popular and best traits for resourceful leaders. I looked this up and it was interesting that 3 different articles had the exact same 6 traits. So it seems to be unanimous when I was doing my research on how to present this piece of the puzzle here. And we're going to start first with an open mind. Again, that's like a growth mindset, to be open-minded, where you can redefine the impossible. And a leader that can do that is bringing a lot of encouragement and possibility into the solution. Second is confidence. Someone who is self-assured as a leader, even in facing the unknown, that's adding calm to a storm, and that's making everybody else then be able to open up their minds to coming up with resourceful solutions. Imaginative. Someone who is a creative thinker, who's willing to think outside that box to look for a solution. Again, they're open-minded. They're going to come up with some of the best ideas in order to figure out how to move forward. Proactive. A leader who is proactive and is ready to take action is going to help solve that problem more than somebody who's going to get into analysis paralysis. So that's really important characteristic to have in order to be a resourceful leader. Persistent. Someone who never gives up. Even when obstacle after obstacle comes up, they know that there's a solution and they keep trying until they find it. They want to finish, they want to cross that finish line. And hopeful. Hopeful is somebody who is positive, who's seeing that glass half full and who can spread that to the rest of the team in the organization. The energy of an organization being hopeful and positive is much better than the energy of a team that's believing there's no way out, that they've tried everything and they're in a sinking ship. And I've been in organizations that's happened to, and it doesn't go well. So always having someone who can bring that hope and that positivity into a crisis is going to be able to find the solution or encourage others there to find solutions. Now, we talked about it being a mix of skill and mindset. And interestingly, I put these things side by side for a reason. There is 4 principles of problem solving. It was a mathematician, I think it was back in 1945, who came up with these 4 steps. But then there's 6 steps to problem solving that kind of overlaps in there, and I felt like these were important to have side by side. So the first principle in problem solving is understanding the problem. That's really sitting down and going through the scenario completely and making sure you know what the real problem is. And that's important before you start devising a plan. So your second step in problem solving is to devise a plan. But your 6 steps of problem solving really starts with the planning. So that's why I felt it was important to put these 2 together. As you're devising a plan, you're going to need to plan, strategize, and prioritize all of the options that you have available to you. And then to carry out the plan, you're going to want to set goals. You're going to want to set benchmarks along the way, and you're going to want to know what you want to complete when and in what order. So that's a part of your plan, and that's also a part of your goal setting. Also, within implementing a plan is you're going to need to have the resources. You're going to need to find them, line them up, and figure out how to manage those resources, whether they be people or whether they be other such things as technology, tools, and things like that. And then the look back. The look back goes hand in hand with monitoring progress. You're going to want to keep looking at how far you've come, whether you're on the path for success or whether you need to change course at any point in time. The one important part of this is if something's not working, learn from it. That's not when you want to persevere on the same path. That's not going to give you the results you want. So monitoring where you're at and determining whether the stage you're at is still on course to get you where you're going is essential in your problem-solving skills. So I hope today brought you a better understanding and a new view of what this resourcefulness is all about. It is a mindset. It is a skill. The problem-solving skills have a lot of mindset built into them. So if there's any questions, I would love to hear them. So how does this show up for you? one of the things that as a coach, I help my clients is getting the clarity around bringing the more meaning and fulfillment to their day-to-day. That's what I do as a business and a career coach. And this requires tapping into not only my own resourcefulness, but the resourcefulness of the client that I'm working with, so that they are able to find the right strategies for themselves, find their own answers, so that, because most of the time they know the right answer for themselves, in the same way that you know what shoe fits you better than anybody else. So I would invite you to take a look at how resourcefulness is showing up for you in your business and your life. And if ever you have a need to work with an unbiased party to help you figure out the solutions that you're caught up, feel free to schedule a call with me, because that's what I love to do, is helping people find that clarity along their path. So I hope this was helpful. And if there's any questions, I would love it. Faustine's asking, are there any exercises that I can share with my team for them to practice resourcefulness? If you go back to those 5 steps that I talked about, really in order to practice, work with a team on resourcefulness, I would ask them to have their own voice first in looking at it, and to challenge when they feel like they're stuck. That's when they would want to take a look at, is their mindset blocking them from finding the answer? So there's a lot of inner work that goes in determining this resourcefulness. So if you had a problem, an exercise would be is to present a problem, and you can even make one up. Present that to your team. Ask them all to consider what their piece of the contribution to that solution might be, and to see what they come up with, to see what answers they have. Find out who's like, I'm totally blank. Why are they blank? Then you can walk them through that as to what's blocking them from finding the answers, or what they think the possibilities really exist. There's a lot of measuring that goes on in doing that. So if you were to take the steps that I had put out there and giving them the opportunity to find the solutions and then working together, the best exercise is to have a case study and find a solution. You know, we were talking earlier about how you've been getting some interesting phone calls coming into the Better Business Bureau. What if you asked your team to find a solution to make it more clear to the people in your area what the Better Business Bureau is about, and what calls are not something that you can really provide assistance with? How can you get that message out to the world so that you're not fielding calls that really have nothing to do with your business? Because those are a bit of a distraction to what you are doing. That might be one thing. Thank you for that question, Faustine. If you want, I can stop sharing the screen and we can have a more open dialogue. Okay. So does anybody have any other questions that they might be interested? Did I confuse anybody, overwhelm you? I'd love some feedback. No? Well, then I'd like to thank everybody for being here, and I'm hoping that you got something out of this. And feel free to connect with me either on LinkedIn or by sending me an email. And if you have any questions after this event, feel free to send them to me, because the only way I can improve a presentation is if I get some feedback that tells me that I might have missed the mark somewhere along the way and I can improve it.
Great. Thank you so much, Eileen, for taking time out of your busy day to help present this webinar on resourcefulness. Thank you, everyone, for attending. Please stay safe out there, and please stay healthy, and have a great day.